start.
It's just, you just bought a smaller shirt.
A medium.
I know.
It'll work for me. I'm flex, but I really like this shirt.
Okay, I didn't receive it, so I just forwarded it. Okay,
Or the connection would be awesome.
well, that's what I wondered.
Yes.
So, it might help if you were to.
Yes, that's
So if you send it to me,
All right.
and then I'll send it to them.
Do we need to revisit that?
Yeah, no hurry, I just wanted to make sure I
So
was
I
doing
need
it.
to, before you guys
As you
leave today,
requested.
like
Right.
solidify a date and time that the three of you.
Very good.
Sometime before Friday, or before you leave today.
Chair.
or before you leave
I'm
today.
sitting.
Well, you don't have to meet 2 days necessarily, but
Yeah, it's something you need to take care of, and we take care of it over here.
yeah, you can do that.
Effective basic.
This isn't the site, ad hoc committee needs to meet sometime for the end of the week. So after this meeting, if we can figure it out, whether it's today or a different day.
Just weed.
Oh, did you burn one before you came? I'm teasing.
You smell dark?
No, I smelled smoke. Yes, no. And then he says,
Yes, very.
oh,
The next chimney smell like a chimney.
oh gee. Ooh.
Well, I used to smell like chimneys, but that's just from building.
Oh. I think we need, Linda, if we have time, we probably need to speak to Huber before we leave. If, because I have an 11 in Yuba. Oh, no, everybody knows I have a standing meeting at 11 o'clock in Yuba City. Time to go. You didn't know that?
No, no, I did, and that's why.
Oh, no, I didn't want any because I knew somebody had asked a question, so I just bowed out gracefully. Well, so
I think I'll
was gonna
probably
do the
tell
same
them
thing
beginning that
today,
week.
just bow out.
Yeah, at the end.
I think so, but I let Jackie know and Corey know, so. Yeah, because we're audio and you don't want to say, hi, everybody.
Welcome to the special meeting of April 23rd, Oroville City Council meeting. Calling this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll?
Councilmember Pittman.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here?
Councilmember Draper. Councilmember Hatley. Councilmember Goodson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Thompson, and Mayor Reynolds.
Here. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, we need to have an emergency closed session after this meeting. Our building official has announced that he has decided to go out on his own and leave the city effective May 2nd. We need to be able to discuss that in the personnel matter.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, just to dot the i's and cross the t's on this one. Tell me the positioning of the building official?
Yes.
The director of
Chief Building Official.
chief building official. Okay. So the following came to the attention of the City of Oroville staff subsequent to the posting of the agenda for this April 23rd, 2019 special meeting pursuant to Government Code 54954.2. Staff is requesting the council take action to add this item to the agenda. The action would be to add the following item to closed session agenda, item number 1. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B, the council will meet with the acting city administrator, personnel officer, and city attorney to consider the employment related to the following position, Director of Chief Building Official. This does require a 2/3 vote to add this to the agenda.
And we don't fall under the 72-hour rule?
This is actually an exception pursuant to Government Code 54954.2. This is an exception to the posting requirement for this item. In particular, with this item, we're simply looking for direction. We're not looking to either spend city money or take action. So there isn't going to be some action that would necessarily be reported out. We're looking for direction as to what to do.
Okay.
This would be, it is legal, it is permitted to add it, provided there's a motion, a second, and a 2/3 vote of the council, which for 7 members means 6 of you would need to approve adding this to the agenda to take that action.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion to add this to the closed session agenda.
I'll make that motion. I move that we add the building inspector position to our closed session agenda.
A second.
Motion carries.
And
Thank you.
thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to remind council that in these morning meetings, we have council members that have other standing meetings, and we have a council member with a meeting at 11 o'clock that is 30 miles away, so we would like to be wrapped up as quickly as possible. So just read every other line, Ruth.
Our goal will be to be into closed session by, say, 15 to 10, if that works for you, Ruth.
Okay.
45 minutes?
Thank you.
Well, good thing I made a handout, because then you could just read it later. Now, I wanted to spend some time, good morning, council members.
Good morning.
Mayor Reynolds. I'm really appreciative of you coming out today. I have prepared an overview of our expenditures. The last workshop, we talked about revenues. This one, we're just gonna focus on our expenditures. And the CalPERS problem being our most major concern in budgeting, I went ahead and made a handout. I've been going to seminars, conferences, participating in webinars, talking to League of California Cities. I just thought it would be nice to get most of the important things that I've been looking at in one summary form for you, so you could reference it whenever you, maybe something comes up on the topic and you want more clarification of what's going on. So I made a summary. I'll go over it really quick, and then we'll get on to the expenditure presentation. So on the first page, I just have a little bit about CalPERS. It is the nation's largest pension fund. So it's actually been a great pension fund up until about 2008 when we had that big, huge recession. It was super funded. There were years when they didn't even ask the city for contributions, and that's over. I think they have made it a policy now to never allow that again, even if they are super funded. So kind of going along, I'll just go along in order here. So here's an overview of CalPERS on the front page and a summary of how it's affecting us. The rising pension costs are our most pressing financial issue. We have our pension costs, the unfunded liability specifically, is expected to double in 6 years. We're probably in the second year of that. So it's been really hard to meet these increases. Before, any unfunded liability was just included in our normal costs, but in 2016, they separated out and said, cities, you're gonna make up the difference, because they had such a hard time making their investment returns, and the fund was about to go under. So the unfunded liability became the problem of everybody. So that started in 2016. We're about 4 years into that, but every year it's bad news. Every year it's like, oh, investment returns weren't that great. Here's your new liability. So they give us 1 year of payments when they give us our actuarial valuation reports, and then the rest is just an estimate. So every year we get a new number and a new estimate, and it's every year it's worse. So here's an explanation of why the pensions are increasing so rapidly. The first bullet point is because of the Great Recession. That year, the CalPERS Fund experienced a 27% negative return on their investments. That's when it became a great problem for everybody. That was almost a 35% loss to the fund total. So the next thing we had was lowering the discount rate. So they've always done their actuarial valuations based on what they expect to get out many, many years, and it was at 8.25. They couldn't meet that, so they lowered it to 7.75. And a few years ago, they said, "No, we really need to make that 7." So they've been phasing in the 7%. When the actual number that they expect to receive now by a meeting of a bunch of economists is about 6.1. So that all the estimates that we're getting are based on them earning 7, but if they only earn 6.1, it's a greater problem than we're even realizing right now. Another factor is the enhanced pension benefits. They authorized by state law enhanced benefits for public safety. Another reason is mortality rates. People are living longer. They always base their projections on how long people will live, and we're living a lot longer. So what's causing right now is a lot of the ratio of active workers to retirees. It used to be an opposite ratio where there was 2 people working for every retiree, and it's pretty much done a flip-flop now. I think our ratio for this city is about 1 person working for 2 retirees. So that totally flipped around. Then I have a nice little glossary of terms. If you hear any of these terms, here's a good reference of what they mean. The City of Oroville's plans, we have 2 basic plans. It's a miscellaneous plan and the safety plan. But since the Reform Act, the Pension Reform Act in 2013, we have a new thing called PEPRA. So we have new PEPRA employees. Anybody starting after that date retires at 62 for miscellaneous and 57 for police and safety. So you can see that little graph shows you what people can expect if they are a classic member or a PEPRA employee. The PEPRA, that was a Pension Reform Act of 2013, was a way to address the problem, but they figured it's not going to be any help to the fund for 25 years because we have to wait for these people to get hired and get retired. So they're thinking this really isn't going to have an impact for 25 years to come. The next little bullet point is the investment performance and historical returns. So there's just a lot of statistics here on how they used to be earning a lot and now they're not earning so much. You can see by the graph here, in 2000, looks like 2009, that's the negative investment return from the recession that really started the problem. I keep seeing this graph called the PERS buck. I'm watching it from year to year, and you can see that in 16, the CalPERS members, that would be our employees, pay. So this is for every dollar that we pay they pay a retiree. This is where it comes from. 13 cents of it comes from our active employees. 25 cents comes from the city, and 62 cents is based on the investment earnings. So you can really see how tied their investment earnings is to paying the retirees. When they don't do well, it's not good. So then the next year, the members are still paying 13 cents, the city's paying 26 cents, and the investment paid 61 cents. I didn't get the next year in there, but the next year is almost exactly the same. The investment earnings are paying 59 cents, the city's paying 27 cents, and the members are paying 13 cents. I think what's important to see here is that it's not affecting our employees as much as it's affecting the city. So when CalPERS does better or worse, the city pays more or less. But the active employees are still at 13 cents, so they're pretty much staying the same. So the next little graph is the CalPERS. This is what they talk about every year, being funded. A few years ago, they were 68% funded. I believe at the most recent meeting that I went to, they're saying they're 70% funded. They have had a couple good investment years where they've actually earned more than their target. So it's going in the right direction, but experts are saying that if the fund ever drops below 50 to 55%, then it's no longer viable. So it's a dangerous level to get close to.
If it drops below what number, 60?
50 to 55%.
55, okay.
Yeah, so 68 was, I believe, might be the lowest they've ever been.
Quick question. Ruth, in your other graphic that has the investment return, have they ever produced a graphic that had the investment return over the years and the fact the legislature got into policy making on what they could invest in and not invest in?
Oh, no, I haven't seen that, but that was like the first thing that the CEO of CalPERS talked about at my last meeting. She really asked for everybody's buy-in to no more divestment, because they have a lot of people at the podium asking them, please don't invest in tobacco, please don't invest in the pipelines, don't invest in the wall.
Which
Yeah.
was a huge loss.
Yeah.
That, to me, the state legislature
Yeah.
needs to take accountability for this, because they've screwed this mess up.
Yes. Yeah, so they are taking the policy now that anybody at the podium asking them to divest, they are saying, no, please no. We need to focus on sustaining the fund. So that's been a real challenge for them. But no, I haven't seen any graph like that. But
I think it would be an interesting thing, because it would really tie into why we're in this problem.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So the next graph is something that I've been doing every year. I also have it in my slideshow, so we'll talk about it more then. But I went back. I was picking up the current year and going forward, but I went back the last couple years, because when I keep saying that it's doubling, I'm kind of losing, the focus point from where it started. So I'm going to continue to keep the prior years in this graph. So the last page is some tools that everybody talks about, and I just wanted to put this in here so that you knew that we're looking at everything and trying to be as progressive as we can for this problem. One of the things that we have done, the first little checkbox, is we've dedicated one-time monies to our pension.
Right.
We recently, the last one is the Section 115 Trust. We opened that up and we've dedicated one-time money to that fund to help us address future pension problems. So we have already done that checkbox. We've reserved one-time revenue. We've done a lot of labor negotiating. We did pay cuts. Many of our employees are sharing in the cost. Yes?
Approximately how much is in that reserve right now?
1.6 million. It will be 2 million by the year end.
Okay, thank you.
Ruth, just to educate me on the 115 trust, who's the agency managing that for us?
PARS.
Ours is.
PARS. And so we've done all these. The two that aren't checked, one's called the Fresh Start. That is where CalPERS is willing to sit down with you. They're willing to look at all of your losses that we're paying. Our unfunded liability is 22 million. They're willing to sit down with you and say, hey, you know, kind of like, let's take all this and refinance it. So you have one level payment. Everybody's telling me don't do that because it locks you in. They said a better approach is a soft fresh start where you look at it yourself and you decide I'm going to make extra payments, or they call them ad hoc payments. I'm going to do that myself, but then you're not locked in. And I think that's kind of what we're doing with putting the one-time money aside, and at a later date we're going to dedicate that money to it. So I don't really feel like the fresh start is a good choice for us because it will lock us into it'll even and smooth out the rates, but we're locked in and we won't have the ability to do what we need to do. And the next one that's not checked off is pension obligation bonds. This comes up a lot. A lot of people suggest it. I've had labor negotiators come in and say, how come you haven't done this? The Government Finance Officers Association is issued an advisory against it, and recently in December I talked to our League of California Cities rep, Dane. He said don't do it. He said you're just getting a loan to pay a loan. He said it just doesn't make sense. And I think it could make sense if you got a better interest rate and CalPERS is charging you more. I mean, it could, but nobody knows. These are all estimates. So everybody's saying you should need to take an approach where you do a little of this. We're doing the trust. We do a little of this. We're looking at all the revenues or all the avenues, but just not locking yourself into one thing. So pension bonds, I think, will continue to stay on the radar, but right now they're not advisable by the League of California Cities or the Government Finance Officers Association.
A long time ago, when we upgraded the retirement for the city of Oroville, we went from half pay at 55 to 2%. We got an obligation bond to pay for
Yes.
that. Have we satisfied that?
No, that's part of this graft. If you see this graft, it's the orange part of the graft.
Okay.
It'll be paid off in
Thank you.
a few years, yeah. We have that slide in the presentation, but no, we're still paying on that.
The other issue with PERS is that this 7% anticipated return, on average, they just make it or don't make it, which means you have your pension obligation bond or you enter an agreement to pay off what you owe, but then they don't make the return the following year, and guess what? You have an unfunded liability again,
Yeah.
which is why there's a recommendation by virtually everybody is don't do it.
No, and it doesn't sound appealing to me to have a fixed pension bond obligation, and then all of a sudden now you have a new unfunded liability, and then you have both. It could be really messy. So I wanted you to know we're looking at all the tools that are given to us, but there's a few that we decided not to do, and I'll let you know why.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I'd just like to add one thing, and thank you for the wonderful charts, because I'm really visual, and that really helps me a lot. But I would like to mention that the idea of putting one-time monies in that additional account for pensions was voted on by the last council, and that is a prime example of fiscal care. So I'm
Yes.
thankful that we were able to get that done.
There is $3.9 million committed to going in there. We're getting it, it's coming in twice a year from our ROPS, but there is 3.9 committed to there. So, you know, like last year we had a surplus, we have one-time money. I haven't really been coming and asking for more one-time monies to go in there. It's just been sitting in fund balance. So those are things we're gonna need to look at if that's something you want to look at every single one-time money that comes in, or if you're good with the 3.9.
You mentioned the 3.9, and I want to make sure that the live stream audience understands that that would be coming out of, because it wasn't clear.
The 3.9 million that was committed to this, most of it is a loan payback from the state
All
that
right.
has to do with the RDA that we are getting back with interest. And the previous council said, go ahead and put all of
Right.
that to the pension stabilization fund.
Thank you for clarifying that, 'cause that was going to be a question.
On the pension stabilization fund, do you have any current numbers on the rate of return from that?
Yes, I do. I actually delayed putting money into it because it was not performing well. And last month it performed 4.58% in 1 month. So I hurried up and got all the money in there. It also created an accounting nightmare to have some of it in and some of it not. But we are tracking it in a fund, but I'm actually putting it in the PARs at this higher rate now.
Thank you.
Just a real quick comparison. Social Security, there was some discussion several years ago where they were going to let folks, of course it failed, but where part of that Social Security would then be invested, where people could direct it. And the huge criticism was that's like, playing the lottery or gambling with your money. So it's interesting that CalPERS relies heavily on investment.
Yeah.
So is there really any difference between those two models? And if not, is there any long-term plans to move to a different type of model that's more stable?
There has been talk of CalPERS moving their investments to a third party where, somebody came to the podium and said, I don't want you investing in it. Said, that's not us, that's a third party. They haven't done that yet, though, because I heard there's, admin fees involved with that. They have to pay somebody. They're actually just more drawing a hard line saying, we want to be in control of our investments. We're not really going to be able to satisfy special groups right now.
And I'd like to add that most public pension funds do have that investment component. I have CalSTRS, and a large part of that, comes from their investments. And I know my husband's IBW pension is the same way.
Yeah.
So this is a standard
Yeah.
thing, really.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things from them. This was even before the Santa Rosa fire. I heard that they have a large amount of real property holdings, and they were getting really killed on insurance because of climate change. And then the Santa Rosa fire hit, and now we have the Camp Fire. So I don't think any of this is going to help. It's going to drive up insurance, and it's just going to make it harder for them to be.
Thank you,
Fine.
Ruth.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk, are there any speakers on this item?
I do not have any public speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
So-
You're welcome. So I'm going to go real quick through the actual, that was just an overview of the summary that I did. I actually have a presentation kind of mapping out our expenditures. That's okay. I'll be quick, I promise. It's actually the same as last year, just freshened up. So I just kind of made a slide of our major budgeting concerns. We have an increase in our unfunded liability of $276,000. You're looking at that number, you might not think that's a big deal, but last year we had 200,000, and the year before we had 200,000, so it's compounding. We're paying this 276 plus last year's 250, so it's compounding every year. I saw somebody approach me and they just did a graph of the increases and said, well, you only need $3 million. I'm like, no. It's compounding. It's adding to every year. We have to pay that plus this every year. So it was more like $6 million.
Oh, and more importantly, know how good the investment's been, how good the market's been in the last 2 years. And still, it went up. So imagine if the market doesn't go up like it's been going up.
Yeah, I'll switch to another slide. I wanted to know why it didn't go down, because we make over $1 million in payments to the unfunded liability every year. And I wanted to know, okay, it was 22 million last year. We still owe 22 million. It only went down by a couple 100,000. Why did this not go down more? And then he reminded me it was because of the discount rate adjustment had gone down another 0.25%. So it made our liabilities stay the same even after paying $1 million. This is the last year, so everything we pay this year, I'm really hoping to see the 22 million start to go down, unless they have a bad investment return year, and it's just going to change every year.
Ruth,
Yeah.
let me ask you too. I have been reading that a recession is coming. Is that kind of a standard
Yes.
thought in the?
Oh yeah, I hear it all the time. In fact, I was really leery of going to put more money in the PARS account because it wasn't performing and knowing there's a recession. But from everything I heard, it's not going to be as bad as the last one. You just need to be ready for it, and I think we are.
Thank you.
I think we're considering it in everything we do.
Thanks, Ruth.
So health insurance increases, we don't know what they are this year. We always get those pretty much June, right when we're finishing up the budget. But in the last 5 years, they did increase 24%. Property insurance increases this year. We had one of the years where they actually sent an appraiser up. They really increased the value on a lot of our properties by a lot, which was really concerning. And then they said that it could go up as much as 50% due to the campfire. We don't have the numbers yet, but that could be a really significant increase to this budget. Very scary.
Are you saying the properties that the city owns?
Yes.
Policies are going up?
Yes. The appraisals went up on several buildings. I think our State Theater went up by $8,000 just in the premium because it was deemed as a historical building and they reappraised it. And Liz can tell you more about that, but yeah, there was a lot of concerning jumps in our property values.
Yeah, no, they did the appraisal, and what happened was, all of our properties went up, most of them significantly in their appraisal price, and so I had the gal come up and say, what happened? And she goes, well, we realized that we weren't appraising them, the replacement value for what was in California. They kind of take different factors from across the United States, and they found out that it was costing more to replace buildings in California than other places. So they changed their reporting method, which increased our properties significantly in premiums. And then we get the campfire, and so our property insurance is going, you may see as much as a 50% increase there also. So Ruth is right, we could see significant increases in our premiums for our property insurance.
Question, so what do we pay?
Right now it's about 300,000, might be 330. I don't have the number with me, but so that could increase 150,000.
Okay. Is there any thought of having a big umbrella and self-insuring a portion?
This is self-insurance.
Oh, it is. We're already doing that. Okay.
All 22 cities gather together and we pool to self-insure ourselves. So this is kind of what we're facing, and of course, had we not had the campfire, things would be looking different. But because of that, they are going to be discussing at the next board meeting ways we might mitigate those. We might mitigate those increases, like raising our deductible. Right now, our deductible is $5,000 per occurrence. So we had one of the fire F-150s burn up in the campfire. We have a $5,000 deductible, but they're replacing it with a brand new truck and brand new equipment, everything. So we may look at other ways we can mitigate those increases by maybe increasing our deductibles or doing something else to drop the premiums.
The next item is our staffing levels. As you know, we have a lot of holes in our city. I think we're just going to meet in closed session after this regarding that same topic. So that is another topic. Another major budgeting concern is how are we going to budget for our new district tax? I think we tried to do some goal setting to find out what the direction of the council was. I think we have a good idea of what you might want, so we'll be bringing a preliminary budget and discussing that and going over that with the oversight committee. So we have 4 major categories of expenses. We have salaries and benefits, services and supplies, capital outlay, and transfers. This is our last budget by category. So you can see that the salaries and benefits are the major, major portion of our budget. There's not a lot going on after that. Another area to look at is the outside services. When I was doing the slide last year, it was 945,000. That really increased as we dwindled down in staff. We are making up for it with consultants. So that number is going up and proportionate with this. When the salaries go down, the outside services go up. Maintenance is about the same. The utilities and telecommunications only changed $90. I thought, wow, that's good. They didn't increase a lot. Insurance, there's the $300,000 that we paid last year. If that could go to $450 this year, we're not sure. And other is just all the other little things that go in there. And the transfer, most of that transfer was the negotiated salary pay cuts. We transferred right out into our pension stabilization fund. That was $536,000.
Ruth, how much every 2 weeks is our payroll?
About $156,000. But then if we have payouts, holiday payouts, we have times where it's different, but mostly about $156,000 every 2 weeks. So here is a more dissected view of just salaries and benefits. This is 100%. You can see that public safety is 76%, and total salaries and benefits are 73% of our budget. 16% of that is our pension costs. They said to look for that to be more like 20 in the years to come. So 20% of our general fund budget is just going to be pensions. This is just more on the discount rate. I'll go ahead and skip that because it's in the little summary we did. This is more on the liability, how when they lowered the discount rate, our payments went up, and these are just factors that could increase our payment and factors that could decrease our payment.
And you'll notice that that's the 7% versus economists saying 6.1. So if those numbers are accurate, every year there's going to be more unfunded liability.
I'll go ahead and the last paragraph there is what we did last year. I sent out an email. When you prepay, so we budget for what they tell us we have to pay. And they say in July, if you want to, you can pay that monthly. This is your payment. But they say if you pay it in July, you could save 3.5%. So last year we saved $32,000 by paying it all in July. But since we budgeted for the whole thing, we took that money and we paid it towards the unfunded liability as an additional payment. And I was planning to do that again this year if there's not a problem with that, because right now the cash flow, we have a $6 million fund balance, so cash flow is not an issue. We might as well be realizing these savings and doing what we can. So I'm going to do that again this year. And also the PEPRA, last year we paid off. I'm just going to plan on paying the total PEPRA every year so that we don't amortize these PEPRA payments for 30 years. It's 20 now, but we're going to pay off PEPRA every year, and we're going to prepay everything to realize a little bit of savings. Here's the graph. So the orange is our pension obligation bond payment that ends in 2023. You can see that's the height of, we're going to reach 3.5 million in 2023. That's going to be the height of it. Before I was talking about this fresh start, that's where they take the yellow and the blue and they refinance that so it's one steady payment, which would be good for budgeting, but I'm leery of doing that and getting more unfunded liability on top of that. We could really dig ourselves a hole. So just kind of tracking everything with this slide. It would be nice to see a nice even, and that's what we hope to do with the pension stabilization fund, is when we get to that payment of where we need to come up with $3.5 million, or maybe using it then to smooth out these payments. But that we have a few years to look into that. Health insurance, we don't know what that is yet, but it's still a major concern. The last 6 years, it increased 28%. The HMO plan increased 30%, so we got rid of it in 15-16. That's any questions? I think we've been pretty good about doing questions as we went, so
Well, thank you, Ruth.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no public comments, you said, Madam Clerk?
There is no public comment at this time.
And this item doesn't require a vote? No? Okay, at this time, we're going to convene a closed session.